Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. My name is Rob Wilson and it's a new week, so there is a new Chinese car brand on sale, and this is the XPENG G6. So let's see if it's any good. Okay, but before we drive it, let's take a quick look around the outside, and we'll start as usual at the front, where you can see that this car has a very bubbly, rounded styling, and we've got a massive bar going across the top here. This section is your daytime running lights / your indicators, and then your actual headlight housing is mounted further down in the bumper. You do have the XPENG badge, which I wouldn't have known if someone had showed me, and you do have your ventage and lattice work, a bit like a Greg's pastry, to get the cooling into the battery. And then down at the side we find these actually rather good looking 20-inch alloy wheels, and they have some Michelin rubber on them, no less than the Pilot Sport EVs. We have an XPENG logo here with a camera hidden in there. There's also cameras under the wing mirror. You'll notice that the door handles are flush to the car, and you can set that to open when you flip the key. And then here you can see the egg-shaped nature of this car. It is a bit odd looking, and it's actually it's telling lies as well, this car, because your eyes are instinctively drawn to this bright silver bit, so it looks more coupe than it actually is, because there's a black bit of trim here that then goes onto the full-length sunroof that the car has, and then that actually means, hopefully, when we get inside, there'll be a bit more headroom for tall people like me. We've also got a charging flap which opens when you press it and not when you hit it 60 times off camera, and you can see that you've got your full CCS charging in there. And the big plus of this car is that it can charge at 280 kilowatts, which is very fast indeed, almost redundant in Britain because there are very few chargers that can go beyond that. There is a new version of this car because it's a Chinese car and they're facelifted every 15 seconds. So when that one comes out next year, it'll be able to charge at 400 kilowatts, which is more than any charger in Britain can do. But right now, it means that it can charge from 10 to 80% in just 12 minutes. That is crazy. Anyway, I'll close that up, press that button, and then we'll look at the back, because here we get a more clear view of the wraparound lights that sort of emulate and copy those at the front, except where you think the brake lights will be, which would be in this section, they are not. They are down here because obviously in certain markets brake lights can't be on the bit of the boot that moves. It's also worth noting you have a proper wiper fitted to this car. It's just hidden up here under this small spoiler. We also have XPENG spelled out on the boot lid and the model designation G6, just like a G6. Anyway, let's open up the boot, which is electronic of course, and then once this is opened up you will find 571 litres of boot space, and if I fold down those back seats that goes up to 1,374 litres. Now in terms of space with the seats up, that is 1 litre more than something like a Skoda Enyaq coupe, but if I folded the seats down it's actually quite a bit smaller than something like the Enyaq. So there are wins and there are not. Anyway, in terms of features in here, we have an parcel shelf, we have a 12-volt outlet, we've got a big subwoofer over here, and if I lift up this luxurious carpet and the boot floor underneath, you can find that there is space to keep your cables in and your warning triangle and your tools and various different things. So that's all good. The only thing that it's really missing is any sort of practical features like hooks or nets or tie down points. You do not get any of that. But let's go and see what the back seats are like, because maybe they're better. Okay, so here in the back seats, and I guess I'll start by talking about the amount of space I have on offer back here. So for reference, This driver's seat is set up in my driving position, and I am 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall, and as you can see, my legs have absolutely loads of space for moving back here, no problem at all. You also will note that the driver's seat is mounted high enough that I can push my toes and feet underneath the seat without any problems as well, and this floor is completely flat, so if you were carrying a third middle passenger here in the back, you'd be fine for foot room as well. And this middle seat is pretty flat and not quite as nice as these outer seats, but it would do for shorter journeys. It's not going to be too much of a hassle. And then in terms of the headroom that I've got in here, it's absolutely brilliant because we've got this glass roof that goes the full length of the roof line, and yeah, absolutely fine for headroom, don't need to slouch, and I can even recline these seats as well if I wanted to, but frankly, I don't really see the need to. And then in terms of actual practical things we've got back here, I have an armrest here in the center, which if I push this button, I have some cup holders that pop out, very 2000s. And if I put that back up, you can see the Isofix on the outer seats. I've got some seat back pockets on both of the front seats. We've got a really decent sized rear door cubby. And then down here in the center, we've got two USB-Cs and some climate vents, but we don't have the ability to change the climate controls from back here because there is no screen or any buttons, so you'd have to ask up front either your driver or passenger to do that for you. And while we're speaking about that, this car does have heated rear seats, but unfortunately you also have to ask up there for that because there is literally no way of controlling anything from back here because there are no buttons provided. So that is a bit of an odd choice, and there are a couple of odd things about this car other than how it looks, but let's hop up front and see what it's like up there. Right, so up here in the front, and I guess I'll start by talking about just how minimalist this whole interior is, because as you can see, it's not exactly a button fest in here. Now, I will address the fact that I have quite clearly got a rectangular steering wheel. I'm not really sure you can call it a wheel. I've got a steering rectangle in front of me, which is a bit of an odd choice. It's sort of like a halfway house between a proper wheel and a yoke. I don't like it, but that's what it's like. I would suggest that XPENG change that on their revised model coming next year. On the steering wheel, again, we have very limited controls. You've got a couple of arrows for adjusting, in this case, the speed that the air comes out of the vents, and this dial is a temperature controller as well. So while a lot of the functionality is in this giant screen here in the center, you don't have to use it when you, for example, have connected your Apple CarPlay. There is a caveat with that, which is if you are using the adaptive cruise control or the basically self-driving functionality of this car, which you enter by doing a double tap down of the drive controls. Wonder where they got that idea from. It's Tesla. That doesn't become the controls for that sort of stuff anymore, which is a bit annoying. That then becomes your speed management, so you can set the speed that you want the car to be going, and then these become your distance. So they are configurable, but the functionality of them is removed when you are using certain other settings, because then this side is your skip track and your volume button as well, and your back menu for when you're going around in these different screens. So yeah, odd decisions going on there. In this screen that I have for the driver, there is a hell of a lot of information, and I'm not sure that basically any of it is really relevant other than the speed, because this side has got your tyre pressures on it constantly, just tells you what they are. It's also got your drive mode that you're in. Again, no buttons for doing that, it's all in the screen. And then this side has got all your driver information. So it does tell you helpful things like how far you've driven and how long you've been driving for. But it does give you your efficiency figures in gibberish. It gives you them in kilowatt hours per 100 miles, which you would think it was a sensible equation, but it isn't, because you have to divide the 100 miles by the kilowatt hours that you're doing. So it's not actually that easy to work out in your head. Basically, what you need to know is this car on WLTP says it will do 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. This car hasn't been doing that. It's 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour, so it is not the most efficient car in the world. The other weird thing is it does have a battery percentage gauge and a range written there, but all it gives you is a WLTP figure. So it's saying what the car should do, but it's not telling you what it will do. So again, if you are planning journeys, that's not really that helpful, because it depends what kind of roads you're driving on as to how efficient it's going to be. Anyway, we'll skip over that, because I do sort of have to address that most of the things to do with this car are all within this screen. So as I mentioned, your climate controls are in here, and if you want to do things, simple things like direct the airflow, because you'll notice on these huge air vents there isn't another button or lever for directing the airflow. You have to do it in the screen, which is just, in my opinion, ridiculous. Anyway, you've got all of that various different things, and you can see the airflow depending on where on the screen the blue lines are. Also, you can do the rear from here, so again, completely pointless if you are a backseat passenger. But then you've got the seats and steering wheel stuff, so you've got cooled functionality up in the front, but then, as I was saying, your heated seats you have to put on in the back from the front. Make it make sense, because I can't. Anyway, you can go into the car's settings. Another weird thing, lights. You would think that that was a pretty sensible thing that you should have a lever or a button for, but because this right-hand stalk is your drive selector, this left-hand stalk has to be both your wiper and light controls, and it doesn't have on it the ability to just turn the lights on. So you just have to rely on the auto headlights, which is fine, but there are certain scenarios when you want to put the lights on when the car wouldn't necessarily want to put the lights on. You can flash people with this stalk, but that's it. You can't do much else beside it. So that means your fog light switch is in here as well, which, yeah, is just silly. Anyway, seat controls, that's all in here. If you want to set your memory seats, all of that stuff. You can adjust most of the stuff from bits on the side of the seats, but yeah, it's all obviously within the screen. Oh, I've accidentally pressed a button and now I don't know what's happening. It's moving things. Also within the car menus, you've got the ability to change through all of your drive modes. So this is very Tesla, if you're familiar with that sort of stuff. You've got your regen and whether you want to turn on your assisted driving stuff, so that's all in there, but we'll talk more about that stuff when we drive it. I'm going to quickly run through the other practical things that we've got going on here. We've got massive door bins, can fit a bottle of water in like this, and that's a good job because these cup holders here in the center don't fit a bottle of water in. We've got two wireless charging pads, both are cooled. You've got a shelf thing that's hidden underneath this plinth with the wireless chargers on, and that has a 12 volt and some USB-Cs in there as well. We've got a cubby underneath this armrest, and it's actually enormous. It isn't cooled or anything special like that, but it is a really decent amount of space, and that's a good thing because there is no glove box. Well, you tell me. I've not been able to find a way of opening that panel if it does open, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't open. I was sort of expecting it to be within one of these many zillions of menus, but I can't find it. So please tell me in the comments if you own one and you think I'm wrong, but there you go. And then just quickly, material quality, it's fine, but it's not brilliant. All of this leather is very shiny and shows marks very easily. I don't think it's actually leather, but yeah, it's not as nice as other cars in this class from the likes of the VW Group cars or the Kia and Hyundai cars. But I think what I'll do now is head out on the road and drive it and see what it's actually like. Okay, so out driving the XPENG, and firstly I apologise that my hair has suddenly become very wet. That's because it's the peak of British summer in July when I'm filming this, so naturally there was the heaviest downpour of rain you've ever seen in your entire life for no reason while I was packing the cameras away. Anyway, the car, let me talk you through the figures. So we have 285 PS, we've got 440 Newton meters of torque, and that means 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds. And it'll go into a top speed of 124 miles per hour. Now we've actually got quite a large battery as well. We've got a 87 kilowatt hour battery on board, of which about 84 kilowatt hours is actually usable. Now you would think that that would translate into quite a big range, because that is a big old battery, but our WLTP official range is 354 miles, which I will insert now a bit of video that shows that that's what the car will say it will do. But as we discussed when we were talking in the front of the car, that isn't actually a true reflection of what the car thinks it will do. That's just what the WLTP range says it should do. So yeah, not brilliantly helpful. What I can tell you is that it is rated at 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour, but it's actually doing about 2.7. So you can do the maths for that. It's not going to do 350 miles. It might do 300 on a good day. That efficiency figure is also quite weird when you know that this car weighs around 2.1 tons, which by itself sounds like quite a high figure. But when you compare it to various different rivals, things like the Skoda Enyaq or the Kia EV6, those cars are both 2.2 tons, so 100 kilograms heavier than this, and they can accelerate quicker and go further on a charge with smaller batteries. So it really is just an efficiency problem. And it's not the drag coefficient either, because this car has a drag coefficient of 0.24, which, while not as good as something like the Skoda Enyaq or Tesla Model Y, is better than the EV6. So yeah, it's sort of a weird mix of numbers that don't really make much sense when they're all put together. Speaking of things that don't make much sense when they're all put together, let's talk about the driving dynamics of the XPENG, because I probably should have started with this from the off. This is not a sporty car in the slightest. It's not like your VRS Skoda stuff or your GT Kia stuff or your N Hyundai stuff. This is very much set up in the realm of comfort and floaty driving, because yeah, there is basically no real feeling that the steering inputs that I'm putting in have anything to do with what's happening with the front wheels on this car. You sort of find yourself going into corners and guessing how much steering input you need to put in. Like, is it this much? No, it's a little bit more, or no, it's a little bit less. So yeah, it's definitely not as well calibrated as its European and Korean rivals. So yes, it's not the most dynamic drive in the world, but if you're in the market for an EV crossover coupe style thingy, is driving dynamics top of your list? It shouldn't be. You're looking at the wrong car if that's the case. But if you are looking at something like that, the Ioniq 5N exists, so go and buy one of those. One thing that this car does have in its favour is its price. The entry-level car is under £40,000, which the Kia EV6 and Skoda Enyaq can also claim, but those cars have much, much smaller batteries and don't have the range. And yes, the slower version of this does have a smaller battery, but this top spec car with all of this range is £45,000, which is not bad at all, really, because to get that sort of range from other car makers, you need to be looking at the 50,000 plus range as well. And because there aren't really any optional extras on the XPENG, you just sort of pick the colour, then everything's included. And when I say everything, shall we talk about some of the safety stuff that we've got going on in here? Because it does have one of those little cameras that's watching me all the time, and I have noticed that every time I yawn, it tells me that I need to pull over because I'm tired, which is a little bit annoying because people just yawn. Doesn't mean that they're going to fall asleep at the wheel in the next 5 seconds, but there you go. It does have adaptive cruise control, so as I was saying, you push down once on this lever and that has activated the cruise control, and if I push down twice, that now engages the self-drive functionality. So it is very similar to how the Tesla operates, and it works brilliantly actually. I'm on a dual carriageway now, and it is staying in the lane, it's staying at the speed. If I want to up the speed, I can do so on my little dial down here, which was controlling the air conditioning stuff before, is now controlling the speed, as I was saying. So yeah, that is confusing, and it's really clear what the car can see and what's happening around you, because it has, very similar to the Tesla, little models on my screen, so I can see that there's a car in that lane, and it knows, for example, that that is a van, not a car in front of me, so that it does have that different level of differentiation, and it can see things like traffic cones, so that is pretty good. So technologically, it is probably on par with things like a Tesla, but yeah, it's just lacking in the dynamics department, shall we say. Anyway, that's probably enough talking about how it to drive, so I think what I'll do now is I'll head back and I will do a bit of a conclusion for you. Okay then, so that is the XPENG G6 tested. So what am I thinking? Well, I don't think it's quite at the level where it's being properly calibrated for European tastes just yet, but there is that new version coming to the UK very early in 2026 by all accounts, and that will improve a lot of the things that I think need improving on this model. However, the caveat, or the big plus point for this car, is it is very cheap in comparison to what else is out there. This top spec long range car, £45,000. That's what a lot of other cars, Tesla, start at for this sort of range that this car offers. The starting model, £39,000. That puts it on par with things like the Skoda Enyaq and the Kia EV6. But yeah, it's just not quite on that level in terms of its driving dynamics. But let me know what you think about the XPENG G6 down in the comments section. And while you're there, make sure to give this video a like, and please do subscribe and ding the notification bell so you never miss one of our uploads. If you want to support the channel, you can have a look down there as well. In the description, we've got links to our social media, to our merch, and you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.